DM, and I am joined alongside in the booth by Ben Creighton for commentary today. Ben, how are you doing?
Oh, it's another wonderful day of Rando, this wonderful holiday weekend. The sun is shining, and that means it's time to sit indoors and watch people play a quarter-decade-old video game. Let's go!
It sounds like about the thing, doesn't it? Not only that, but they have already scheduled Game 2. Game 2 will start an hour earlier tomorrow on July the 4th. If you are going to be enjoying some nice grilled meat and some grilled corn or whatever else it is you're going to do with your day, well, we've got some rando to go along with it tomorrow. But first up on the docket, we've got this Game 1 of the series, which ought to be getting underway here in a little under a minute.
Yep, you can enjoy your red, white, and blue tomorrow. Today it's all about red, green, and blue. Let's see some armor upgrades today. Let's get real tanky, shall we?
That is entirely possible. Unlike the recently concluded main tournament, the Challenge Cup is run on Standard 7-7. This is not a hard item pool. Our runners can find mail upgrades. The silver arrows exist out there in the world somewhere, so does the butter sword. Mirror Shield might even be on offer to them today. And, everything's there, just waiting to be found somewhere.
And we're off, and oh, we're adopted. Ah, dang it. It's off to a bad start.
But you can see just how much your adoptive uncle loves you, so, not that terrible.
And that was an early map check. I saw Pendant Desert, looks like Red Crystal Eastern, and a Blue Crystal in Tower of Hera.
Certainly a bit of a mixed bag there in the light world, but, 2 crystals is okay to be getting on with, and Desert is the one that requires a little more to get into anyway, so being kind of kept away from that Pendant Dungeon, not the worst thing in the world.
Yep, and we've got a bomb start from our fake uncle here today. I saw Garrison practicing the bomb start just before the race, so she should be in good shape. Also a mushroom to be found in the Uncle Passage.
It's dark and rainy, and here in the dark and rain we have found a little bit of fruit there, tucked away in a chest in the sewer of escape.
Yep, it must be a party because the fun guy's already here.
This, just in case anybody is joining us and is unfamiliar with the mode, this is a standard 7-7 seed, meaning that our runners have started in the rain. As you've already seen, they have to go down and rescue the princess from the cell in the basement of the castle, and carry her all the way out to the sanctuary. Once that's done, then they can just continue on as any other normal old-fashioned 7-7 seed.
And there's a sword, so all that practice for bomb start is made up about the time it takes to check the map for Garrison there.
That seems to have worked out okay for Garrison. He took a couple of seconds to check the map, and then that practice that he put in gained him those couple of seconds right back. Not a bad thing if you can get away with it, and now, of course, both of our runners are going to be very comfortable with that sword. We see latebit
Garrison showing off that doorbell strat against the guard in that room, which is something that you've seen favored recently. Latebit with the poke and spin strat, usually more favored of NMG runners because it's faster if you have the boomerang to go ahead and grab that small key from where you're standing.
And latebit does come to rando from the NMG community, may have the slight execution advantage here, and it is going to show in some of the strats he's going to pull off, like that kill of the blue key guard. At Garrison, meanwhile, an old rando hand at this point is maybe the one with a bit of rando savvy on his side. So, we've got an interesting matchup, those rando brain skills versus the NMG style execution.
Yep, even if you come to this game through Rando, I do always advise folks to, you know what, take a couple runs through NMG, and it'll help you tighten up your execution some, and don't ask me when's the last time I took my own advice.
There is certainly some overlap there. I'm with you. I definitely do recommend it to people. I don't take my own advice maybe as often as I should. If the mashing through the text boxes is the thing that holds you back from it, I would recommend having a chat with Sahasrabot and asking him for the vanilla preset, which is NMG, but with all of the text boxes stripped out. P.S. It will also enable quick swap by default.
Now that's handy. I wonder how that affects some of the later rooms where you're trying to avoid being in that menu and sticking with the same item for room after room.
Well, quick swap is in fact the thing that allows you to stay out of the menu, that's for sure. Between that and the text boxes coming out, my very rough guesstimate is that it shaves off somewhere on the order of 10 to 12 minutes. Which means that my for vanilla preset time is absolutely atrocious. But, you know, here we are. Now, one nice thing about finding that sword after the bombs start is our runners have plenty of bombs to work with here. Not going to be any question about getting into the back 3 chests of the escape sequence.
And they'll both be getting the Master Sword for their troubles. Very nice to find.
Garrison going to take advantage of those additional bombs and go out the top. It doesn't seem to have gained or lost him a whole lot of time, but, you know, here we are. Runner's still basically synced up, heading out towards the Sanctuary. So Ben, what do you think about the Master Sword having shown up already? Just how heavily is the seed hinting at Aga at this point?
You know, I never start worrying about that until after we've seen what's in CAC. That's what's really going to answer that question, because as of right now, we have none of our 3-part Dark World Access puzzle, but if we find, say, Glove and Hammer and CAC, then I'm not worried at all.
It is entirely reasonable. Of course, there are something like, what, 13 or 14 checks in the village area, then you've got all of South Shore, which is going to give you another 10-ish, and Sahasrala, maybe even Eastern if you happen to find a bow or you're feeling a bit adventurous. So it is early days yet. I just have that sneaking suspicion when the game just starts throwing swords at you right off the hop that, well, you know, I'm probably going to find a lot of other things first, but the chances that the entire Dark World Access puzzle is going to come together is maybe a little lower than one might at first believe. I have Garrison making an additional check of the tree pole there, finding hearts on, I believe that was tier 1.
I believe you're right, so late bit pulling just the tiniest bit ahead, heading into Blind's hut, but these little leads seem so important during the linear.
Also, that time that Garrison decided to spend getting that other tree pole knowledge in addition to the earlier map check, I'm wondering if we're going to see him playing a little more thoroughly than late bit wants to in this seed. Maybe a little difficult to guess that based off of a tree pole and a choice to check the map before getting into the castle proper for the escape sequence, but might be something to keep an eye on.
Yep. And the Turban Merchant just delivering up a piece of heart today. pretty rupee light seed so far.
The seed's been generous in a lot of ways so far, but the money has been not forthcoming to this point.
Of course, it is always nice to have that bottle before heading past the lovely Sick Kid's hut, where latebit and Garrison will be heading in just a moment. And there we go. The seed makes a liar of me. Have a $300 stack.
Yeah, raiding the bar, apparently they've been doing a pretty solid business. Also, our runner is certainly not lacking for explosives in the early game. That 10-bomb starter pack and then a few more in the village to make sure that they stay topped off.
Yeah, resource management has not been much of a problem so far. Just cash in the library. Looks like everybody's doing a booming business. Those late fees add up.
No kidding.
Sword beams helping Garrison get through that mini mold arm room just a little more quickly. And not much to speak of. Some cash and a second bottle, but absolutely nil in the way of progression here in Mini Moldorm today.
Nothing there to write home about at all. Latebit may be mildly happy that one of those was a bomb refund after bombing his way through the mini Moldorms in the front half of that cave, but yeah, that's not really changing the calculus for either of our runners right now.
And another potential spot for divergence coming up, coming out of Ice Rod Cave. You can stick in logic, save and quit, and head maybe to eastern area. Or we could see a fake flip check in this probable Aga seed. Going a little out of logic could save you a lot of time, and that is the glove there in the Ice Rod Cave today.
And here's exactly that divergence you were talking about. Both of our runners picked that glove up, but Garrison's going to go ahead and carry on to the fake flipper play, even though he's 95 rupees short of Sora. While latebit has the, looks like it has the Sahasrara Eastern play on the mind, that Yoshi there.
Yep, taking a slight detour to check the Hylia Island, just a trio of blueberries.
You know, hopefully the birds are going to be able to feast on those and they won't just rot on the vine. So Garrison's going to be a bit out of logic here, but if he finds another 100-ish rupees, then the actual Zora check is in logic because of that glove.
And just a heart container and a bunch of nothing in Sorcerer's Closet today. Latebit going to continue on into Eastern, it looks like.
Certainly are starting to run low on logical checks here. Latebit knowing that either the hammer or the lamp is very... That is an interesting layout to be sure. The, Turtle Rock requires a whole lot of things to get into it, but once you have them, you start wondering, has the game given me all of these things for a reason if I'm not in go mode yet?
Yep, of course, that's a question for a little later on. Right now, latebit is indeed making this Front of Skull Woods play that a lot of runners these days consider just part of the overworld. And I'd be surprised if they don't head down into the Village of Outcasts area after that.
I think this play has gained in popularity because so often something is just tucked away in the front here. I've seen a lot of fire rods in the front of Skull Woods lately. It's been kind of ridiculous, actually. And if not that, then something else really useful like the hammer before you go into Thieves Town.
Yeah, it's always nice not to have to worry about leaving that Thieves' Town big chest behind. Or it might just be 20 bucks.
Yeah, sometimes it's just 20 bucks, but that's rando. Also the big key, so a potential Schrodinger's second item. And Garrison ought to be landing on his Titansmiths here in the near future.
And it looks like that. Let's see what the big key holds. Just a small key. That's odd. That's a downgrade game. Don't you know that? So that second Skullwoods item will be remaining hidden for the moment.
Going to need the fire rod to find it. Of course, that may be really what we're looking for the fire rod to do in this seed, is to get us into the back of Skullwoods for that crystal. And Garrison working his way through the dark portion of Eastern Palace, heading for that vanilla big key location for one more check before he heads into the dark world, most likely. Latebit turning up twin arrows there in the chest game. I don't know that I've actually seen that happen before.
Yep, of course. Single arrow.
Long. Unsurprising that Garrison is also going to go ahead and enter that village portal, going to get that same Dark World map check knowledge that Latebit has already acquired. But he seems not to have fire rodless Skullwoods on the mind here, is instead heading directly with the fire rod and preferably in go mode, because he won't be looking for items in the front of Skullwoods necessarily. We know that the only thing tucked away in there is that 20 the Latebit found.
And speaking of Latebit, they just made their way through the harmless... Well, not the harmless, the actual Hellway, the bad one.
It still has about half a health pool to be getting on with. Of course, these crickets on green mail will absolutely love to do 2 hearts of damage to you.
Yep. They've got a blue goo in their back pocket, but it's not something you want to spend here if you can help it. Especially with that powder in hand. As long as you can make it back to that anti-fairy, you've got an easy health refill right along your critical path.
Opts not to go for the 1 cycle there on the spikes. You can stair lag cancel, and as long as you get swapped over to your down input quickly enough, you can actually kind of worm your way through all of that, but discretion may be the better part of valor when on half a health pool. And we have yet to see the small key. The last place that can possibly show up for Latebit is in the Maiden Cell here.
And that's not it. Instead, that's the hook shot.
Hookshot's gonna get you some places that you want to go in this game. After all, Swamp Palace is a crystal dungeon. That hookshot 100% required to complete it. Also going to give access to the eastern side of the mountain. Now that trip would still be out of logic without a lamp or a flute, but once you have the mitts already well in hand, I don't know how much longer our runners might want to put that off.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of density, and without any completable dungeons after this one, the density play might be the right play.
I could see them continuing on down at least as far as Tripe Cave first. Those 5 checks there kind of hanging out saying, you know, something might be here, but by the same token, we've taken to calling it Tripe Cave instead for a reason. It has not been consistently hype in quite some time.
And latebit just picking up the first crystal of the game. Gonna go ahead and round out the Village of Outcast checks, at least, as we would expect. And yeah, this is definitely the safer play rather than hitting up Death Mountain right this second. We've got Dig Game, we've got Stumpy, and then of course Hype Cave. That's 7 checks that you don't want to have to walk all the way back down from Sank to get back to these.
Agreed, especially since what you're hoping to have show up here would be something like a mirror or a hammer to make Death Mountain just a little nicer. And these are checks that are likely going to be made eventually anyway, and will not get nicer if you wouldn't then find something like the hammer up there. But speaking of finding things that you're going to want eventually anyway, those flippers on the Dig Game are going to stand a 8-bit in good stead.
Yep. It does also raise the question, they're going to Hype Cave almost regardless. You've got those flippers. Are you going to go ahead and continue this route into a pendant pod?
That is certainly a possibility. Pendant Pod has plenty of possible locations. With a potion in hand, our runners could choose to sequence break the bow-locked side and clear out pretty much everything except the boss. Garrison falling just a little off script there in Phase 3, but has cleaned up blind nicely. Is going to tie that crystal count between our runners up at 1 apiece.
And so far we've got the boomerang, a lamp, and that's about it there in Hype Cave.
Well, that lamp is the last piece of the logical mountain access puzzle, so looks like 8-bit may be considering Palace of Darkness anyway.
Yeah, it does also take a couple of those Palace of Darkness checks that weren't in logic, namely the 2 dark maze chests and the big chest, and depending on key layout, could put them back in.
And Garrison, a little low on rupees, having already made that play to the Zorlord, is playing the archery game here, so he may also have the Palace of Darkness at the front of his mind at the moment. Or he was actually low enough that he could not play the Dig Game without doing so.
Yep, I didn't notice. Dig Game usually tends to pay for himself. He'll need another 12 if he wants to get into pod. And there he goes. Or you could just find another 300 stack there on the pyramid ledge, so 8-bit should be set for money for the rest of the game.
The seed does seem to be throwing the money out there right before the runners need it in pretty much all cases.
8-bit opting to stay out of pod for the moment and head up to Catfish instead.
It's an interesting choice, kind of a location that can become a bit of a one-off, unfortunately, so finding a way to route it in is not the worst thing in the world. Garrison going to pick up his lamp and not much else out of Tripe Cave here in about 10 seconds.
Ooh, and that's an ice rod in, of course, a pendant T-Rock seed.
That's an interesting find in an out-of-the-way location, and if we had a Crystal TR, if you're a latebit partisan, you would feel really good about latebit's chances right now, but Turtle Rock is our green pendant instead.
Yep, and if I'm reading things right, I think the only required piece of the puzzle that T-Rock could be holding is the bow, so not much chance that that ice rod will come into use.
There's also the chance that the flute lives in there somewhere. We're going to need that to get to Mire.
Ooh, yes, very good point. And Raid's pointing out in chat that that could also hold Bombos for Mire access, but only a 1 in 3 chance that Bombos will be required.
So both of our runners with only a couple of mild divergences have kind of converged again here on the mountain. That 5 rupees for saving the old man from the dark is not really going to do anything for them. The 3 hundos have flowed pretty freely.
Oh, and talk about the key being under the doorstep. That's the mirror inside Spectacle Rock, which will lead to Tower of Hera and another crystal.
Once again, the seed seeming to throw these items out just in time. The path appears to be fairly linear.
And welcome Raiders from Zelda Speedruns 2 to the semifinals, match 1 between WGarrison and latebit here in the Link to the Past Randomizer Challenge Cup. We've had a fairly linear seed so far, with our 2 runners kind of swapping leads as they go out of their way for some of the more out-of-the-way checks, spend a little time here, save it there with a skip, but right now looking pretty neck and neck, a little over a half an hour into this race.
With those little convergences, little divergences they've made, they've still managed to converge back on the mountain within maybe 5 or 6 seconds of each other at the moment.
And there's the boots. They're in the bombable chest of Paradox Cave.
Those do open up a couple of possible item locations, but most runners just want them because they let you go fast.
Yep. Also a blue mail, a book, and a red mail. What was I saying earlier about I hope this is a tanky seed?
Well, we're 35 minutes in and it's a tanky seed now, isn't it? That book also opening up a few locations. The tablets are available to us now with that mirror in hand, and, well, you know, who knows, maybe we have a flute hiding out in Pendant Desert Palace to get into Mire.
Or maybe, did my little eye spy a hammer there on the floating island?
looks like the mirror is getting the job done at the moment, doesn't it?
It certainly does at that.
Latebit also going to pick up bottle number 3. That one's got a red potion in it. Certainly not going to turn that down when you've already opened the chest anyway.
So with that hammer in tow and the mirror, this sea just blew wide open. We've got Swamp Palace, we've got Ice Palace.
Ice Palace is going to be a little challenging without a Fire Rod or the Bombos medallion, but that Swamp Palace play could definitely be a next one for our runners.
You are absolutely right. So yeah, that's Swamp Palace. Being a fully clearable crystal dungeon, but of course we've also got Hera right in front of us, so that's thinking yet a couple steps ahead.
And Garrison's route has not yet shown him the hammer up here. He's going to mirror and spy that and going to go right back. So both of our runners going to be in here, probably not going to care too much about spying that TR medallion requirement, since they have no Cane of Samaria to go in anyway. But it could be a piece of knowledge that they might want, just in case.
My feeling is you're right here. It costs you a screen transition either way. Go ahead and get the knowledge. And it is Quake today. Garrison getting a little bullied by the Lionels there, opts to spiral.
Oh, and there's that book starting to do the work that I was talking about just a minute ago, the Fire Rod coming down from the sky over the Ether Tablet.
All the goodies up on this mountain today, and that does make Hera guaranteed completable and in logic, as opposed to just, maybe in logic, completable with Hera Pot.
Well, our runners did already have the lamp. They could have used that down in the basement. It's slower, it doesn't feel as good, but, it'll work.
That's right, you're absolutely right. Speaking of Hera Pot, latebit getting it off first try, nicely done.
Garrison about to pick up that Fire Rod as well. Latebit saw, I think that was a 20 in the... Is that the map or the compass chest? I never remember.
Nor can I. And oh, that dead rock making a nuisance of itself.
That is what dead rocks do best. Speaking of making a nuisance of itself, Moldorm was definitely trying to push Latebit over the edge there, but Latebit has made the comeback with the sword held out, finds another red 20.
Yep, so that is both items here in Hera. No need for the basement, but unfortunately Garrison's going to be spending that time anyway to get the big key. He's going to be disappointed when he opens that big chest.
That is decidedly a choice. Late bit with the gamble that the big chest was not going to have a thing, and it does pay off. Not that the items there were any great shakes, but getting to save the time on the entire basement trip is definitely helpful to him. Also, of course, that fire rod giving us the last key we needed to enter and defeat Ice Palace appears to be Late Bit's next destination.
Yep. Swamp and Ice is an interesting choice without Red Cane to your name. Do you want to do Ice first, hoping that you might be able to safely skip left side Swamp if you find Go mode before then, or do you put off Ice, hoping to find Red Cane for Icebreaker?
These are the choices our runners get to make. Garrison with the spin speed version of the Harapot there, also cleanly done, is going to be disappointed with the big chest find here, and Late Bit already kinda down into the guts of Ice Palace, has a check under his belt already.
Yep, speaking of cleanly done, very nice Bomb Strats Pengator room there on Late Bit's side. That is the fastest, most efficient way to take care of that room, but it does take a little bit of practice.
Not only is it a fast and efficient way to clear the room, it also looks really swaggy.
Absolutely. And Garrison heading into his own Moldorm fight, as Late Bit's gonna show off another fun piece of old school NMG strat. That lovely classic IPBJ. Don't forget about it just because Icebreaker's a thing now. You still might need it.
Late Bit on over to the Icebreaker side here, finds the cape in the Icebreaker chest, while Garrison is now backtracking. I think he was thinking about the play over to Skull Woods and has remembered the balk checks.
Oh, and there's that Red Cane. So Garrison will be able to show off the other way we get through Ice Palace.
That is a fancy find, to be sure. Now we're still short a bow, absolutely, and that flute needs to appear as well. So he may not get to go mode with that, but he probably is going to go ahead and show the Icebreaker off for us when we get to Ice Palace on his side.
Yep. What that also opens up is the Spectre of Turtle Rock, which could hold either of those two items. But that's a concern for after Swamp Palace is under our belts.
Yeah, the fully clearable Crystal Dungeon's going to come first, but I find myself in agreement with a couple of our chatters here. Who's going to put down points for Flute and Turtle Rock? Flute or bow in Turtle Rock would not be surprising to me.
Yeah, of course, we've also got a Pendant Pod available, so lots of really nasty places where aggression could be hiding at the...
And Late Bit has not really pulled anything of note out of this Ice Palace play thus far. I did catch a full heart container here recently, but, you know, that's not really a progression item.
And getting a couple of good swings in on the triple cold stare puffs before letting them break out of that corner. Late Bit is now out of magic and relying on Master Sword spins.
Master Sword spins do get the job done. They do tempered slash damage, and tempered slashes are reasonably quick in the grand scheme of things. But probably more important is that third crystal that falls from the sky.
And Garrison is heading towards the back of Skull Woods for his moth fight. Likely to give back a little of that time that he gained skipping the front of Skull, because we do know there is an item there.
Well, some of that will depend on how he checks the front of Skull, because he's going to get one of the items here, so if he goes in and goes immediately right first, he's going to skip 3 checks that latebit made.
Yeah, that's true.
And it appears that latebit has the Bombos tablet on the mind, and we'll then parlay that right on into a play into Crystal Swamp Palace.
And the moth goes down. No point has it felt like a dangerous one. And both bosses go down. There are 2 items there left in Swamp Palace.
Yep, that big key there on Argus, you know, kind of trying to bait you back in.
But latebit saying, I've got too much other stuff to worry about. I'm going to leave those there and see what I can find. Looks like flipper checks in the offing.
It appears to be, as you surmised, has not yet done those Zora area checks.
That might have had something to do with latebit's decision to head into desert, knowing that post-swamp, they're going to have to pick left or right. And doing one of those directions beforehand simplified that decision-making. Unfortunately, so far, neither's been the answer.
It appears that Garrison, in his haste to head down to Swamp Palace, did not quite get into the Dark World first, so a little backtracking there.
Yep, and we're about to get a new check on Garrison's side, Cave 45. Another one of our awkward out-of-the-way spots. This could be huge if it's holding something good.
Another one of those checks that the mirror enabled, and it's just some more of those blueberries. So it seems obvious enough that Garrison's next play is going to be into Swamp, plus or minus checking the Bombos tablet first. latebit, on the other hand, is ready to go ahead and make that dive into Pendant Pod, it appears.
Yep, and I noticed latebit checking their bottle contents, finding a red potion there. We'll be able to potion glitch and get those bow-locked items.
And yes, as Structural Mike is pointing out in chat, latebit continues to not do boots checks. Until he decides to avail himself of those, the big red cane of Samaria, that glitch stick that cracks the Dark World right in half, is not going to enter the inventory. So, since we're likely to see a bunch of keys in the front of Pod, and Garrison is going to show us things that latebit has already shown us here in the Swamp Palace, and we're about an hour into this, this is probably that time to say, if you are enjoying the show the runners are putting on for you today, WGarrison and latebit, do go ahead and give them a follow, show them some love in their own channels. I happen to know that both of them play some rando outside of the time where they're actually on the restream, you know, putting on the show for you in the Challenge Cup tournament. And, you know, it's always appreciated to have somebody come by and say hi. At the same time, I should probably note that I am my DM. My co-com today is Ben Creighton. Slaving over the hot microphones, getting the job done, making sure that everybody can enjoy. Our trackers for this race are Raids and Samimas. And
yes,
double
indeed,
duty is,
the unsung heroes of Rando. Thank you so much again to our trackers.
And doing that yeoman's work there on the back end and actually pulling double duty today, Ricky of Kokiri, the restreamer for this race. So here's latebit has come across the small key that we expected, and now it is that time to unlock the camera with the use of this potion while moving left here, and has probably actually relocked it. May have, yes, has moved too far to the left there.
Yep, there is a little bit of tech known as Mimic Clip that can still get you through that, but it's tricky and it's slow, so I do not blame latebit one bit late, early, or otherwise for opting out of it today.
Instead, going to go back to the logical portion of the checks. The small keys have been kind enough to allow latebit access to the back of this dungeon. Still keeping just enough keys in hand. Might be a little difficult to determine what's still tucked away on that bowlock side. I do not believe that latebit has come across the big key just yet.
I believe you are correct there.
And given there was an item there in the Harmless Hellway, we should also know that there is a small key tucked away on the bowlock side.
Oh, it looks like we were incorrect. 20 bucks in the big chest, so latebit does in fact have that big key. And there's a flute! Pendant Pod pays off once again.
Pendant Pod paying those dividends, and we may still have a bow-locked bow there. It is going to give us access to the Mire area. We can find out if Bombos is still outstanding once latebit activates that flute. But latebit needs to do some bonk checks here. And the one that latebit particularly needs is right here. A turn up will get the job done, but the flute appears to be too strong of a draw.
That is potentially problematic bit if they take that flute where it would seem to be pointing into Mire area. That is the place where Red Cane is going to be needed today.
We have also seen King's Tomb. It was, I think, bombs or sticks. It was not nearly as interesting as the Cane of Samaria that came out of Bonk Rocks. To answer the question in chat, Schulzer, the flute was in the Dark Maze in Pendant Palace of Darkness. And Garrison, continuing this thoroughness play, is going to show us left side swamp. We do know that the bow is still outstanding somewhere.
Yep, we are a bow and a 1/3 chance of bombos from Go Mode. Of course, a sword upgrade certainly would not go amiss at this point.
It does seem likely in the grand scheme of things that one more sword will fall into our runner's laps before this ends, but, if not, well, Master Sword Silverless Ganon is a thing. Perhaps not a fun thing, but it is indeed a thing. Latebit's going to go ahead and drop in on Mothula to say hi. This will even the crystal count back up, while Garrison is going to show us the left side item. It's just a piece of heart. That is the final item. Garrison is done in Swamp Palace.
Yep, and he's gonna go ahead and proceed over to the desert tablet. We know he's not gonna find anything useful there.
It will be interesting to see if he wants to carry this play on over to Desert Palace itself, or if the draw of all of the things needed to access Turtle Rock is strong enough.
Yep, interesting how this is shaken out, because Garrison has everything he needs to enter Turtle Rock. What he doesn't have is the ice rod to complete it, and it is a green pendant Turtle Rock, so there is at least one item locked behind that ice rod.
There are certainly outs left for both runners here.
Structural Mike in chat asking, was speculating whether we might see a PED check from latebit. We do not. Of course, the PED cannot contain that bow, since Pod is a pendant. The only required item the PED could be hiding today would be if Bombos is required for Mire entry.
And this may be an interesting trip on Garrison's part into Desert Palace. Having decided to go back in for Left Side Swamp, appears once again to be making the more thorough of the checks between the two. Will we see a Landmola skill here? Also, latebit finally putting the Lumberjacks to rest, just 50 rupees there.
Yep, from Garrison's perspective, he's minimum 2 items from Go Mode, and he has been playing extra thorough today.
Latebit finally routing these bonk checks in is going to be rewarded with the Cane of Samaria. Simultaneous item acquirings on both of our runners there. One of them just a little more important than the other. Garrison not likely to be happy with the compass showing up there.
And I believe this is a new check on latebit's side. I don't believe we've seen Graveyard Ledge yet. This is another of those awkward, out-of-the-way spots. And no Landmo fight from Garrison quite yet. Graveyard Ledge paying out a little better with a Tempered Sword.
That's one of those nice quality of life items to get. Latebit seems to be in fairly good shape here, but as long as that bow remains outstanding, it's kind of difficult to say.
And it looks like we're getting a Lumberjack check from Garrison. This is not something we've seen on either side yet.
It is 50 rupees. Latebit showed us this about 45 seconds ago.
Whoop, my mistake.
Latebit also going to go for this mushroom turn-in. I'm kind of surprised by the sudden thoroughness, although I guess this is also an excuse to stock back up on potions after that, after the potion camera unlock usage.
Well, it would have been, but latebit decides potions not required. Let's head to Mire area.
Mire area may indeed have the things. We have the Mire Shack, a little old place where you can get 2 items. We've also got Checkerboard Cave to check out, and if neither of those have what our runners are looking for, we would have to think that latebit's going to follow that last piece of the puzzle in the Cane of Samaria into Mire itself, as long as it's not Bombos.
Well, we're going to be kept in suspense on that point for a little while longer, as latebit checks checkerboard, and meanwhile Garrison is heading into the Smith chain.
The absolute refusal on Garrison's side to go over to Pendant Pod, which we know has one of the answers he's looking for, is interesting here. And the vanilla requirement, Ether, to get into Mire today, that is a medallion that our runners already have.
Yep, so we're about to start seeing new checks coming not hot and heavy from sides here. Two items hiding in Mire, plus that 5/6 crystal, but that's if Pyramid Fairy holds a bow, it's bow locked and is not gonna be helpful for us today.
Yeah, it is entirely possible that our second bow could be there, but it will most assuredly not be the first. I see Structural Mike there in chat saying, and I agree with this 100%, or TR. Right at the moment, I cannot help but agree.
Yeah, that would definitely be the density play at this point. Either one of those, in fact. And we know that Pod is going to be entirely required due to the flute hiding out in there.
And it's interesting, with all of the full clearing that Garrison is doing, somehow has not managed to make the trip to Catfish. So if our bow is sitting there on Trinex or on the green pendant, he's still missing something to go get it.
And nothing doing in purple chest today.
I'm still going back to that thought that the seed has given our runners everything needed to get into that pendant turtle rock quite some time ago. It's all been freely available for, what, the better part of 45 minutes now?
Yeah. It's been there for quite a little bit at this point.
And instead, Garrison is back in the Dark World. This is probably a graveyard ledge to Catfish play, and then one would think down to Palace of Darkness from there.
Yep, little detour to check bumper ledge. We know that's not going to be anything he needs.
Still another one of those things that he gets to cross off the list. Latebit having to sit through the cutscene there in Mire. We have a vanilla big key tucked away in the vanilla big key location.
Garrison will now also be rocking Tempered Sword going into the late game here.
That really is the comfort level as far as offensive firepower goes. That gets rid of most of the enemies in the Cannon's Tower Gauntlet in a timely manner. Master Sword kinda doesn't always get the job done there.
Yep, and with no bow in evidence, latebit's going to appreciate having it going into his Vitreous fight in just a few moments here.
This is the fight with the bow not having showed up yet that made me wonder a little if part of the play of turning in that mushroom was to grab a blue potion or two. Being able to turn on the cape here makes life a whole lot easier.
Garrison collecting his freezy stick from the catfish. And he is turning around. Looks like Pod is going to be his next play.
It's been thoroughness all the way down from WGarrison, but unfortunately a lot of that additional thoroughness has not paid out for him, and latebit is likely to get to either the illogical bow or an illogical bow before Garrison does. Unless it happens to be a bow lock on the bow lock side of Pod, if Garrison can nail the potion camera unlock or is a mimic clipper, the worm may yet turn.
Latebit flipping on the cape and wading into that. The spamming that sword is gonna save him the magic. Not sure why latebit opted for hammer strats there. Temper does do equivalent damage and is, boy, just a lot easier to hit with, but either way, the big eyeball goes down.
Yeah, it sure worked out for latebit there, didn't it? And that is crystal number 6 on latebit's side, but we are not yet in go mode here. We have a bit of a bow hunt on our hands. I will say, not to try and take over the show here, but I do appreciate Retro Gunner. You are not the first person in the chat for this race today who has said something along those lines, and I do appreciate it. latebit once again opting out of Land Molas. That would have been the time to route it back in if it had been something that latebit was considering, but I think we're going to go ahead and see the Turtle Rock play here.
Yeah, at this point, both of our runners have put some amount of time into lengthy plays that didn't pay off. I certainly don't fault latebit for heading for the check density at this point. Meanwhile, Garrison does get the Mimic camera unlock, so we've got 2 new checks up here. Not in logic, but when's that ever stopped anybody? I should say 1 new check. That was a small key, and both small keys today. Looks like that final item is going to be hiding on the boss.
Well, we know that Garrison's going to go ahead and continue through here, is going to find that flute, but it appears now that latebit is indeed on the right track. We have a nice little stair clip with the Samaria block there through the pegs for Garrison in Palace of Darkness. It looks fun. It does save a little bit of time.
Yep.
The placement of that Samaria block is just anywhere on the screen. You can lay it down where you want. Laying it down over on that left-hand side to keep the hard hat beetles out makes a lot of sense, of course. So, barring Lanmola's hanging onto our bow and the other one being tucked away in Ganon's tower, it seems really likely that 8-bit is going to stumble upon it here somewhere in this TR play.
Yep, I'm trying to think if there are any other out-of-the-way checks that we haven't seen from either runner's perspective yet, and I'm drawing a blank.
Garrison has really functionally full cleared the overworld here. We've already seen Spike Cave. That was, I believe, just some blueberries. We've seen the Hylia Island. Hylia Island not doing the trick either. Blueberries there. Ah, did 8-bit get this in his trip through here?
I don't believe he did.
With those two small keys being on the Bowlock side, this has all of a sudden become an interesting check. But it is just the map. That final item is indeed on the boss. So Garrison is going to go ahead and activate that flute while 8-bit is getting into kind of the innards, the guts, the middle portion of this Turtle Rock, all of these pipes that you have to wait around for.
And there it is on Lava Chest. That bow, 8-bit entering go mode at 1 hour, 21 minutes and change.
That was the item we were looking for. 8-bit now officially in go mode, has just to run over to Eastern Palace, has already cleared all of the other items out of here, has the big key in hand, just has to run to the back and face off against the Armos Knights.
Yep, 8-bit entering go mode in a very good position. A full Mire dungeon ahead of WGarrison, even if Garrison does everything absolutely right from this point. Garrison's big hope is if that other bow is maybe sitting on Landmos and he decides to make that play, but that's a pretty slim chance at this point.
Now that we've found the sheer density of GT and the rather low number of remaining checks elsewhere says probably not going to be finding the other bow out in the wild somewhere. Garrison not really going to be able to claw a whole lot of time back here in Misery Mire with that big key in its vanilla location. While 8-bit just needs to maneuver through 2 or 3 more rooms here and is going to encounter the Armos Knights and have crystal number 7 in hand very shortly.
Late bit setting up that Armos quick kill. Blasting right through, not a problem, and that is crystal number 7.
That is all 7 crystals well in hand for 8-bit. The only thing standing in front of The pig yet for victory is making that one final mountain climb. Have to go up there, sit through the crystal cutscene, and rummage around in the basement of Ganon's Tower. 22 possible locations where that big key can be. We do play the game just a little differently here on ZSR. You can use !bet and the number that you believe that big key might be located today. How about it, Ben? Do you have a favored location for the big key?
I like to bet 2. Let's just get it right out of the way in Hope Room. Fine, but it's got to be number 2 because you got to find your small key first. What about yourself?
Given the roundabout nature of this seed, I'm thinking probably something more along the lines of 16. But we shall see as latebit dashes across just a couple of more screens, the Tempered Sword going to poke those Lionels right on out of the way. And our runners both waiting through cutscenes here. Garrison has to wait out this wall moving that none of us can see to get at the big key here in Mire, while latebit is waiting for the stairs to extend to get into Ganon's Tower.
And there's the last bottle and a small key. latebit's going to go ahead and continue on to the right-hand side of GT.
There are a number of routes through Ganon's Tower. Most of them work reasonably well. This one, where if you get a small key in Hope Room, you just continue on to the right, is one of them.
And Compass Room has its vanilla compass, but not a whole lot else. That's 6 checks and no big key yet.
latebit going to go ahead and swipe that key after the post-compass room just to have it in hand in case. And we see the mirror shield up on the torch. latebit says, nope, you know what, I'm good. The fire shield is going to do everything that I need it to do. So we're getting the Stalfos room on latebit's side and this fight with Vitreous on WGarrison's side. Using the cape here for a little while, but seems to have run a little low on magic. And the bottles are empty.
Yep, and also a little low on health. Even with red mail, 2.5 hearts will only get you so far in that Vitreous fight.
It was an interesting choice, I thought, when he had the powder out and walked right by the anti-fairy on the way into Vitreous's room, but seems to have things in hand. Even with that half a heart now, can just kind of bounce Vitreous back against the back wall with these tempered sword slashes. And latebit is on through the double firebar room and the fire snake room and is heading for Rando room.
Yep, so called because there's never any reason to come here except in Randomizer. But there's a real good reason to come in here today between the big key and the silvers just to make life extra easy for you.
with one more small key to go along. It was one more than the establishment that you actually need to climb the tower, and that stick refill just in case you were a little short getting into the climb. Kind of the Go Climb Ganon's Tower care package there in Rando Room for 8-bit. I believe that was number 15.
I believe you are correct.
So my 16 guess was close. It was silvers instead, which is not something our runners are going to turn down, of course.
Absolutely. 8-bit heading into the gauntlet, just loaded for bear. With red mail, silver arrows, and the tempered sword, should have no trouble whatsoever.
Rather than bear, may in fact be loaded for pig today. A very feral swine at the top of this tower.
8-bit's aiming to make the late Robert Baratheon look ridiculous for getting killed by a pig.
Seems to be working right on through the gauntlet at a perfectly acceptable clip. Is already at Landmo 2, has those silver arrows out, and the first Landmo says, nope, you know what, I'm going left.
Meanwhile, Garrison is heading into Turtle Rock, where he is destined to find his own bow and the last piece of his puzzle.
This is not the first time this seed that Dead Rocks have not played kindly for Garrison, but even in the event that it had not, this is going to be unfortunately a little bit too late on Garrison's side. Bit working through this first torch puzzle with a mixture of the lamp and the fire rod. Since half magic has not showed up, needs to kind of hold on to a little bit of magic here.
Makes it through with a sliver to spare. No need to mess with the mini Helmosaurs, plenty of keys. And 8-bit finding out that that little sliver was not quite enough to powder the anti-fairies.
And thus is not actually going to reach full health there. Was going to need both of them to fill all the way back up, but you know, 8.5 hearts with that red mail is going to stand you in fairly good stead. Even hugging the pig you can do a couple of times. And we do get a check of the ultimate chest of the game on 8-bit's side. As Chad is saying, it was maybe a little expensive of a parking spot, but here we are, going to go ahead and have this argument with Aga 2, the only argument we're going to have with the wizard today.
Yep, wonderful little triple to start off the fight. One more hit should do it. And the wizard goes down.
Bit going to ramp up the bonk counter a little bit there. And as soon as
8-bit's going to be jumping into the Ganon fight at just about the same time Garrison enters go mode here.
appropriate. The Grand Pig himself is going to give out bacon facts. latebit getting that nice double spin off of the trident seems to be in pretty good position and has gotten the 1 cycle of phase 1.
Pulling out the cape as the health starts getting into dangerous territory.
But has managed to push the fight on into phase 3 and already halfway through phase 3. Garrison charging at full tilt over towards Eastern Palace, cannot possibly know that his opponent is on Ganon even as he runs in the front door, but probably does not feel too good given all of the overworld checks that he made.
latebit making that torch glitch with the fire rod look narrowly missing the triple, but not going to cost him that much. That pig is exploding.
Yep, 4 silver sticks does the trick in phase 4 and the pig explodes. latebit's gonna stand there for a hot handful of seconds with that sword raised high in the air thinking, I hope I don't get sniped, I hope I don't get sniped, I hope I don't get sniped. But as soon as that bridge is crossed, the dot done will be entered. Get your GGs in the chat for latebit, who has taken this game 1 in the best of 3 series with an official race time GG time of 1 hour, 35 minutes, and 43 seconds.
It come in from WGarrison, and we are joined here in chat by both of our runners, GG's latebit and WGarrison.
GG's. That bow placement feels bad.
Yeah, GG's. I just considered Turtle Rock dead after I thoroughly cleared the mountain, and I didn't even check the medallion. I was like, I'm never going to Turtle Rock, and that didn't work.
Garrison, you really thoroughly full cleared just about everything else. Was that kind of intentional in an I'm not going back to Turtle Rock way? But it seemed to have started even before that. You had the very early map check, you intentionally checked another tree pole that latebit didn't, and it seemed to kind of continue on from there. Was that just a playstyle kind of thing?
Well, like, the extra early tree pull just to make sure that I get the money for bottle vendor, like small things like that, I do tend to be kind of thorough. But in Light World, it's easier to be thorough because you're really just trying to hit Dark World, and Dark World's when you really start to like make the decisions of what you really want to skip. And my first decision on what I wanted to skip was I hit Mountain. I'm like, my choice is to full clear Mountain and never look back at it. So my first skip was Turtle Rock.
Yeah, comparatively, latebit, you put off those boots checks for quite some time. There was quite a bit of speculation in chat for a good chunk of the seed about when it was going to be that you were finally going to come across that cane of Samaria and Bonk Rocks.
Yeah, that was my biggest regret by far, especially when I found it, because I was like, well, I did Ice and Swamp with it just sitting here collecting dust, so I did those dungeons a lot slower than I could have, and that just felt pretty bad from there on.
I came off the mountain, and my first thought was to go into Skull Woods and finish that. And I walked past Bonk Rocks and went, oh, wait a minute, I need to turn around and do that. Hit Samaria, I'm like, oh man, that was almost really bad.
Yep, speaking of Swamp Palace, latebit, we noticed that you let it lie fallow for a moment as you went instead Independent Desert. I was curious what led to that decision.
I think some lingering regrets from the Game 3 of my last series with Zen Arcane with Mitz just hanging out in there for an hour. I didn't want anything to be of value in there, so I wanted to just poke my head in there real quick.
Yeah, both of you eventually made that play, and both of you also made the choice not to go to Land Molas.
Yeah, I had plenty of other stuff on my plate at that point. I figured not worth.
I actually kind of regret not bailing immediately after finding the first item in Desert. But 'cause the second item, even if it wasn't on Landmola's, was just going to take that much longer to go get, and I should have just bailed right then and there.
So, of course, this is only game one. Have either of you got any thoughts on how this one played out, and maybe how you foresee the game two coming up tomorrow playing out?
I don't think I can get away with being this sloppy again. There's about 100 things I would have done differently in this seed.
Yeah, I don't feel great about the way... After Mountain, I don't feel great about the way that I played. I definitely want to review it. I want to see what the execution differences were early, especially since we ended up so close. But then, I mean, afterwards, when you make the decision that Turtle Rock is dead to you, and then you play that out, and that's where go mode is, I mean, that's just one of the things that happens. I think a couple things in, like, it's still just making sure that I don't just walk past the boots checks. This is the second time I've done that in this tournament. And then on my way into pod, my intention was to do Pyramid Ledge, and I just walked past that too. I think I want to review a bit about the key logic in pod. I wasn't entirely sure if a bow in Mire would have been out of logic or not. I don't think so, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I don't think so either, but I won't swear to that.
Yeah, it certainly was an entertaining show, Garrison. I think you're going to find that the escape sequence came out really even in the grand scheme of things, even with your early map check. So you probably both have some things to look forward to coming up into this game too.
Yeah, a lot of stuff for me to clean up in game two.
We don't get much time to figure it out either. Game 2's tomorrow at 3 o'clock.
Yes, it is.
Indeed it is, and that is the voice of our wonderful restreamer, Ricky of Kokiri. Before I turn this over to him for some final thoughts and programming notes on the ZSR channels, I should say, Ben Creighton, any final words? It has been a pleasure.
Yep, thanks to both of our runners for putting on a great show. Looking forward to match 2 tomorrow, and as always, big thanks to everybody here at the Challenge Cup and here at the Zelda Speedruns family of channels.
Thank you so much. And with that, we're going to wrap it up here. We have an Ocarina of Time Randomizer weekly race starting up in just a few minutes on this channel. So I want to thank our runners. Thank you to WGarrison and latebit for the awesome match. Please tune in tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern for their round 2. And thank you to our commentators, Ben Crichton and MyNDM. And thank you to our trackers, Raids and names and Samimus for tracking. Everyone did a fantastic job. Thank you all so much, and I hope you all enjoyed it. Stay tuned for Ocarina of Time Randomizer coming up in just a few moments, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!